I think most of us are aware that the word quilting is not in the Bible. It may be there if it's been translated into modern language, and so thus makes it something more sense. But there's many illustrations, and I'm thinking of that kid. Now think about this. That kid who what? Had a beautiful coat. What was his name? Joseph. That young guy with that many-colored coat. Would it have been quilted? Who knows? Our Asian friends made clothing quilted when they were going into battle. Now, we have this image of that comes from Western Europe, the French and the English, of horses and metal plating that the person would wear. And sometimes we even visualize this kind of thing when we talk about that young kid who was going to have to face that giant, what was his name? Yes, that young kid who was going to, had to put on the armor. Do you think he put on metal armor? I doubt it. Did he put on quilted armor? Makes sense, doesn't it? Quilted armor protected your chest area as well as anything else that where else you wore it. So the thicker the material, the more you were protected in battle. Now, what we're saying is that quilting has been around for a long time. It's just that we haven't used that word except in our English language. And our image of quilting is of an American past, where a group of ladies are sitting around a quilting frame. Now today, it's ladies and men, and they're making quilts as decoration, and they cost tens of thousands of dollars. And you buy them in New York City and San Francisco, and sometimes in Paducah, Kentucky, where there's a whole museum and many other shops with all of the quilts you'll ever want to see. And you can go to Nebraska to talk about the history of quilts. And at Marion, Indiana, you can visit a home where a woman designed quilts and produced the designs for people, and you mailed off for them, and you then quilted patterns. So in many ways, you see, quilters have surrounded us, and quilters have been a part of our life, even though we may not have been wrapped in them at any one time or another. Think of a quilt as a voice. Did any of you see the film How to Make an American Quilt? Noel saw it. Others saw it, yes. Or there was a book called How to Make an American Quilt. And the story is about a group of women who are making this quilt for a girl who's to be married. And they are to choose the patches that are going to be joined together to make this quilt. And the patches have something to do about their life, not about her life, their life. And so realistically, they are creating a tape of the lives of all of these women who are joining their patches together to make the quilt. The quilt then becomes a voice for the woman who receives it as a gift. It's a testimony of the hopes and the fears and the love and the loss and the gain of all of these women bound together. And it all comes out of everyday life. Everyday life. You see, quilting is really working together to accomplish a goal, a dream, a vision. And the quilts that you have brought this morning have not just been work. They have been the voice of the past and the voice of the present, saying to you something about love and forgiveness and the message, the very Bible message that we preach and talk about so much. That's why, as you see these quilts spread across the pews, they are representing the people who used to sit in these pews and who are no longer with us. They're our symbol of what it is to be a member of Zion Church. The vision that they once had. Each of us, despite our differences, are bound together by the skill and the precision of the master quilter. The master quilt maker stitches us together as a community through the thread of divine love that connects us one to another. The richness of this quilt, the colors of the quilt, are part of the diversity that exists and that is so necessary in the rainbow that colors our world. Reverend Darius, I was told at the 8 o'clock service, used to come to the quilters' meetings when they finished a quilt, and especially if it was to go to somebody who was special, perhaps someone who really had a need that went beyond the imagination of the quilters themselves. And they first had a prayer and asked God's blessing upon that quilt, and then Reverend Darius dedicated the quilt as if it was the greatest of gifts that could be received by another person. The master quilt maker brought us together today, and we share that gift with one another. The art of quilting is alive in our midst. Amen.